the ICSSR, the Indian Council of Social Work Research. And Marie, I've received your letter. Thanks, and thanks for your comments, Jack. I just received Marie's letter, and I kind of very quickly went through it. And I'm raising this point here because you're right. You looked for what are the criteria for the journal, and they didn't have anything. So it was so weird writing the paper because they didn't even have a style of referencing. So, I was just clueless about how to write the paper, and they don't have articles which they share. So, it was so difficult. But I only did it because it's an Indian journal. It's an Indian, in the sense that it's like with the government. So, I don't think it's got any, like scruples or anything like that. But it's still, because it's a government journal and I was doing this independence program, I thought it would be a good, way to get it, the point in kind of thing. But as I answered Jack and I said, I want to do this as a living theory because it fits so well with my living theory, this whole exercise. So I'm going to write that as soon as I'm a little free, maybe next month. And I think it fits very well with the living educational theory. I kept on thinking about it, but I didn't want to add anything more into it because, first of all, they're not so comfortable with qualitative work. And then, I'm already doing this autoethnography and then, living theory. And I think I would have just wound them all up, And my whole aim is just to get this published, into that journal. So, the whole thing.
Oops. Yeah, it's just gone off. Yes, go on. Maureen, do you want to just catch up? If you're on mute, great.
I suppose my own catch up is, myself and my colleagues here at NERI are writing a book for, so it's kind of very much aimed at kind of grassroots practitioners. But it's very hard really to bridge that whole gap between practice and theory. Even though I know it's something that I know over the years, everybody has been playing with the ideas there, but to actually do it practically is a challenge. So if anybody has any words of advice, I will listen carefully.
Yes. Yes, the issue's been going for over 50 years, isn't it? That kind of the theory practice problem. Yeah, it has. Go on, Marie. Unmute.
Okay, exactly what you're talking about, Maureen, is something that I'm really struggling with. Not to make a connection between theory and practice, but why the hell should anybody engage in research? And it's connected back to what is it to be a professional educator. And I'm also getting to understand better the place that the process of writing plays in, I'll take it in living educational theory research, but I think it also plays a part in other forms of research. It certainly plays a part in your claim to be a professional educator, because part of that challenge is to contribute to a professional knowledge base. You can only do that by actually creating an account that stands beyond yourself. It's got to, and that's the difference. And I'm getting closer, and it's in the writerly and the readerly stages of writing, and it's the movement between inquiry, and research. It's not that research as a set, but how that actually is part of, and that for me is very much why living educational theory research is unique. And it also, the other reason, can I just try this out with you? Because it's really, I'm doing Jack's head in periodically as I try to see if I'm making any sense. We have, in the real world, as you were saying, Swaroop, you're actually saying there is a point to actually people getting these qualifications. There's a point to learning these specific skills to acquire the knowledge that already exists, whether it's in learning how to engage in life skills, how do you actually read research in a way that makes difference for you. If you record, Jack, using Skype, then this will be public on Skype, and I really don't want that. I'm recording on Zoom, recording on Call Recorder, so yeah, I'll make this available to you. I assume that you all know that I do this as an aid memoir. It doesn't go anywhere without you, but I will make this. I'll share this with each of you. Okay, back to. I've lost my thread. Come on, somebody. Where was I?
You were talking about it's part of being a professional educator.
And about learning.
Yes.
Skills.
So it's the acquisition of knowledge and skills, and learning how to acquire that knowledge, but also learning how to create knowledge, which is something that is missing from most of the programs. And it's something I flagged up with you, Swoop, as well. We do it implicitly, but not explicitly. And the result is that we have people who are even putting in doctorates who have not developed some of those skills that they need in order to be able to create their own knowledge, valid knowledge. So there's an interconnection between all of this. So I'll bounce when I've got a little bit clearer. And that's one of the purposes of writing. Because the number of times people have said to me, "Oh yeah, I really get what you're saying," and then I say afterwards to them, "What do you think I've said?" And Pete even tried to transcribe something, and I said, "It's gobbledygook," and he said, "Ooh, yes, it is." What he'd understood was not just in the words, and we need it in the words so that we can actually look at it. It's got to stand beyond ourselves and beyond this immediate bubble where we all say very nice, and we mean it. Yeah, I can understand what you're saying. Yes, this is where it's going. This is, but that is not accessible to anybody else, either to challenge us or to help us progress. So that's all sort of, that mushiness is sort of, I haven't quite managed to distill it into something, and I will try. And maybe if I commit to trying to send you something by next week, it'll take what continually gets pushed off the front burner because I have, like you, all the urgent things to do. But living educational theory research holds together the urgent, like they need to learn these skills, they need to get this level of degree, they need and it served a life purpose, for goodness sake. At the same time as actually judging whether or not we're meeting those educational values. And whether as an educator, this is particularly relevant for educational professional educators, because surely as professional educators, they're not just there to actually get really good at instructing and getting people to learn how to perform, how to do the arts, how to do this or that or whatever, no matter how, as a mathematician, how important. There's also something educational about our practice. And that is, I think, unique as to what living educational theory research forces you to do, is to actually hold those two together, which connects, I think, more with what you're saying about how do we say this to people at the grassroots? Because we are at the grassroots as well, and it's how we are holding this, and trying to actually analyse ourselves what it is that we are doing, how we are doing this in a way that actually meets both those standards. And Swaroop, you've just illustrated very well how you're actually holding those together. And the account of that, I think, will be very good. Anyway, I'll shut up, but that's where I'm at. So maybe if I, no matter how rubbish it is.
Really good, because Jack, just for tomorrow's paper, I was just thinking about knowledge creation and culture of inquiry, and how creating knowledge creation is very difficult without the culture of inquiry, even though they're both separate things. But you need the kind of support And no, Murray, it was really interesting what you said. Thank you.
Yeah. It's come out of what looking at what you had, because in one part you had a quote from somebody saying you can only do this if you have the support. What you show me in your paper is that the basics is actually having the courage to say you're going to do this, and then finding the support you need to do it, not the other way around. It's not the support that allows you to do it. It's actually your courage to say, what support do I need in order to do this? Sorry, it only came to me.
No, that's fantastic. That's exactly what I've been thinking of since the last 2 days. And can I just share a little bit here, though it's about tomorrow, about the ERA group. And we have, I was just thinking of 2 of us from this side of the world, Nepal and India, and Parvati talking about, how much, colonialism and things like that. And I was thinking, that's really not affecting me now, because in the last few years, India's changing. And
oops, that's the sound gone.
Can't hear you, Swaroop.
Your sound is gone, yeah. Okay. Aha. Oh dear.
Trying to fix this, I think.
Yeah. We'll come back as soon as Sir can manage it.
I'm just dropping into the. Sorry, Jack. I'm just dropping into the chat the invitation from Bruce, and you might like to have a look at what he's doing on the second day, and anybody can join.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's fine, sir.
Super. So I was just thinking how different it is that, India is changing, and India is becoming much, like breaking away from the colonial bondage or whatever. And like, for example, I'm creating the new education, I'm writing the position papers for the new curriculum, and we're talking of mother tongue. And if it was about 15 years back, it would have been English first.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And now it doesn't matter if you don't know English, which I think is fantastic, because, that's the only way we're going to be able to stand up, So I was just thinking how different it is, even though both of us are from the same place. And, how when you talk of being empowered, then you say, okay, I'm empowered, I have a voice, but yet I like to have the support, and I love to have Marie, Jack, Brian, and Maureen getting my back.
Yeah.
There's a big difference in that. Marie, are you getting what I'm talking about? I mean, it's totally what you're saying, but, just a little take on that.
That's really interesting. Through a different lens. I need to think about that and process that. Can I just ask you? Sorry, Jack. You want your meeting back? Can I just?
No, sorry. You do this, and then I'll catch up.
Okay.
I'll do my bit.
I was just wondering. You're saying that no longer important to know English, but one of the reasons I thought that one of the problems that you've got in India is that there are so many mother tongues.
So many languages and diversity.
Yeah, so in order for people across the Indian subcontinent to be able to communicate with one another, what language will you be using?
That would be the national language, Hindi.
Hindi. Okay, got it.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah. Thanks for that.
So because most of these languages are based on Sanskrit, and so they're easier to pick up.
Okay, I got it.
Right?
Yeah. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Jack.
I suppose my catch-up is it's focused on something that I experienced with Swaroop in her doctoral viva, and I was really struck by the relational qualities that Swaroop expressed, which seemed to me to transcend, particular contexts. There was something universal in the communication and the values. Now, when I look at the screen, and this is why I want to suggest that we need, if you like, to collect data, a different form of data that Maureen was collecting at NERA. Go on, are you okay? No, okay. Maureen was collecting at NERA, because at NERA I had 2 screenfuls, about 50 people, 25 on each page, and the quality of the conversations, the keynotes, you know, the kind of engagement of people was really, for me, remarkable and exciting. And now that is, for me, data. It showed the 50 people all together. They were actually working peacefully with values that Maureen stressed at the beginning. Maureen began by a statement of the ethical values of NERI. Now, we embodied them. You know, it wasn't just a question of the words. We were actually living those values. Now, this might seem completely, off left field, but if you look at the news yesterday, Mike Pence, when he was Vice President of America, Trump had urged him to overthrow the results of the election. I don't know if you remember this. On January the 6th, 2021, Trump was demanding that Pence in the Senate overthrew the election. Now, Pence yesterday came out and said, look, I had no legal basis for doing that. And he says explicitly, Trump was wrong. Now, if you look at what's happening in number 10 Downing Street at the moment, that Boris Johnson is literally getting rid of all the aides that he himself was responsible for. So his responsibility is ducking completely, and he's just replacing everybody else. Now, in terms of the ethics that Maureen started with NERI, it felt to me that it was denying the fundamental basis of those ethics of what it is to relate together as human beings and push the values of human flourishing. So I think we've got a bit of work to do to actually show what it is we're doing with our communities around the world that are trying to develop those very ethics that Maureen started the NERI group with, and demonstrating how throughout the world we are forming communities and living those values as fully as possible. So that's what I'm focusing on. And tomorrow I've got this AERA symposium contribution, which is, the title is about contributing to equitable education systems. That is the title. The one last year was on educational responsibility. So that's what I'm excited about at the moment, but it's trying to bring in data, only from conversations which involve the quite large numbers of people, like at NERI and other places. So that's me. That's what I'm really trying to work on. And I just mentioned this, but it's just that I was very influenced by one of the people that I supervised for his MPhil. It was called Ram Pillai, and he's in his 80s, but he taught me quite a bit about Hindu understandings, and it was the thought of the Hindu understanding that he had of, if you like, of death, which was, if you like, a movement back into something which is universal, an energy, a flow. I haven't got the right words, but it felt to me that that quality of understanding about the human condition, and in particular in terms of the Hindu notion of death, was really, for me, I know it might sound daft, but it was life affirming. So there's something there that I'm, really working on. It's okay. That's me.
Great.
It's really interesting what you're saying, Jack, and thinking why I keep getting so antsy about the AERA, and you saying, oh, but they're using these wonderful words. This is very much the meanings, it's been said before, we're divided by a common language. The meanings that we give to these words are not the same as the American meanings that they're giving to them. And I think that's very problematic, because I think what happens is that we inadvertently enable the Americans to actually colonize the rest of the world, because they're using and will impose their meanings, like democracy. They impose their meaning of democracy on the rest of the world rather than enabling us actually to develop a common understanding of what democracy might be.
Yeah, but can I just question your use of American? Now, in 1993, a group of us formed the Self-Study of Teacher Education Practices SIG in AERA. We were viewed as a really radical group. Now, there was no such thing as an American interpretation. There were people like, I was thinking of people like Bud Hall and other people, that you can't, I don't think, put everybody under a particular notion of American.
That's not what,
it's heterogeneous.
That's not what I'm saying. I think that the meanings that are given to words are culturally created. And the meanings that, for instance, and you found it, is given to educational in a notion of the American Educational Research Association is not the meanings that you want to give to it, nor actually is it the meanings that the British give to it. Okay. Now, the meaning that, because we more and more use American English, and it's not just the spellings that are different, it's actually the meanings to the words. And the sort of obvious ones that are really amusing are the different meanings that are given to rubber, for instance, rather than a razor. You ask for a rubber in America and people will look at you askance. If you ask for even within Britain, you will get different meanings. So if you talk about crumpets, a crumpet in one part of Britain,
yes, well,
you'll get one thing. Yeah. So, but there is an understanding that is given to it within that American context, and that is what they're talking about. That you are trying to wriggle in there and say, oh, we can have other things. That's okay, as long as you recognise that. Yeah. But you're not having any influence on the American Educational Research Association whatsoever.
Oh, well, that's what
you've been eliminated.
What you mean
no, it's not. It's engaging with a different.
But I believe the opposite of what you're saying. I believe by getting in there and actually doing this with these symposia, that we can demonstrate that we're actually getting our voices heard.
Swaroop is showing you how to do this by putting her paper in. And that is where it would make the difference, not into a conference. Your voice isn't heard in a conference.
Can I just say, because we've got 4 minutes left and Brian has just joined us. Brian, sorry, Brian. Could you just unmute and just capture that, Brian? We're just having our usual row. Go on, Brian.
Okay, I'm been writing my virtues of solution focus practice project. I'm about 2/3 of the way through, and it's shaping up quite nicely. So that's moving forward.
Oh, do please share that as soon as you can, Brian, because we've been talking about values, and I suspect that your notion of the virtues in the solution focus, practice, that would be very, very helpful to us. Okay, yeah, please do.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, I'm pleased we just caught you at the end. That's really good. Yeah. But if I could just also, it's just to follow up what we were just talking about. It's just that what I tend to do is I look for the key people who, for example, the president of AERA last year for the 2021, he was a black guy who was really influential in terms of working against racism. And he had this excellent statement about educational responsibility, which formed the theme of AERA. So I'm just saying that what I tend to do is it doesn't matter whether it's like HELTASA, which is the South African Educational Research Association, and I'm encouraging people from a particular group that Bruce Damon is actually working with to actually submit a proposal for the HELTASA conference, just as I've done for the AERA with Swaroop and others. Am I making sense here? That we go for, if you like, what are the most prestigious educational research associations in particular contexts, and we get our ideas, within those forums. And that's a strategy, I've pursued. Yes.
It exemplifies, Jack, exactly the problem that goes with what it is that you're doing. Because racism and what needs to be done about racism in America is not the same as in India, in Ireland, in
Well, nobody
England.
suggested it is.
It is, because that
Nobody
that
suggested that it is.
what they then dump on everybody else. Black Lives Matter.
No,
It's absolutely archetypal of the problems that then that causes.
Oh God, there is something about colonisation, though.
Yeah, you're helping it.
Yeah, that when you look at Maureen's history of Ireland, that Ireland had something like 600 years of colonisation. Now, that has undoubtedly influenced the culture. And anyway, I don't want to go on about this, but the decolonisation, like in South Africa, it speaks to people that, like in India, it speaks to people that have actually been subjected to imperial forces, sometimes over centuries. But what I'm actually advocating now in our postdoctoral inquiries, that we try and show how the way we are living and the values we're espousing is actually as an alternative, like I was saying with Trump and Boris and other things going on in the world. We've just got to watch the news. And I think we've got something really profoundly important. And for me, it was the Neary meet that highlighted some of this, and Swaroop, what you're doing in those workshops, and then, with the ARA, one of the symposium, like with Brian as well, with the virtues, where you're getting that together. And we're all doing something which I think we can now start to unite in sense of putting it all together. Maureen, could I ask, as the last thing, when do you think you might have your compilation ready, your editing of the Neary meet?
As soon as I can is my answer.
Yes.
Maybe tomorrow. It's very time consuming. It's very
that's
time
really
that's close. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Because if you don't know, it's just that I've got this thing on Wednesday with the Malaysian Action Research Network, and it would be great to be able to reference it. But yeah, that's great.
I'll do my best.
Are we okay for today then? It's great to see everybody.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, super. Yeah, bye.
As long as I've upset you enough, Jack.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.